Welcome back to another episode of Broke Up, Not Broke In. I'm your host, Jamie Lima, and founder of Allegiant Divorce Solutions, where we help people prepare for, navigate, and recover financially from divorce. This podcast is your one-stop shop for mastering your life and your finances throughout the entire divorce process. In today's episode, I'm super excited to have Chelsea Williams, the founder of Core Solutions Group and Money Mastery, and the host of the Always and Never About Money podcast. Chelsea brings over a decade of accounting experience, specifically tailored to helping law firm owners streamline their financial strategies for long-term success. Today, we're going to dive into how financial discipline and strategic planning can transform your business and personal finances while you're going through or in the wake of divorce. Chelsea, it's so great to have you here with us today.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I know, as we were talking about in the lead up to our conversation here today, that we both have some experience with people that are going through divorce amicably. I'm now married to a gal who had a very amicable divorce, and it sounds like yours was as well. So maybe walk us through that and talk a little bit about how that impacted your finances and what your experience was like there.
Yeah, and I don't know about you and your experience, but I feel like we're the minority. I hear like more often than not, it's kind of like this fight and this battle. And so I'm really grateful to have been married to someone who, because it takes two, right? Where we could go through that process. And I mean, we were so nonchalant and fair about it. Like when we got a divorce, I was 2 years into starting my first business, Core Solutions Group, and I had built it. We did over 6 figures in our first 12 months. Like it was great. And there was plenty that we could have fought about. We had accumulated rental properties by the time it came. And I mean, we were basically like, hey, look, this is your business. I don't want anything from your business. And I told him, like, I hate rental properties. The only reason we got into it is because he liked doing that stuff. I hated it. So I'm like, you take the most of that. I don't want any of that headache. And we really just figured out something that was fair for us. I mean, we hardly had a legal contract in place, and it was only because the lawyer was like, no, you need this. And we're like, okay, we'll just put whatever is standard because we work so well together, and we truly did make good partners, but we could acknowledge that it was what it was and it was not what it was not. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But everything was really smooth, and the finances, it was really just about what's fair and, acknowledging that I don't have to hate you just because it didn't work out, and I can be fair, and I have my own strengths that I can now make a living off of.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, my experience was not that personally. Mine was the complete opposite. So you are in the minority and you are in the minority along with my new wife, my second wife. She and her ex-husband, they did things pretty much the same way. There weren't any businesses involved. There weren't any rental property. It was pretty clean from that perspective. There wasn't a lot of complexity to it, but it was basically a decoupling, which is frankly the way that you should go and could go. But a lot of the cases that I see certainly don't go down that path. It's definitely closer to aligned with my scenario, my situation, which was very, very expensive and very, very challenging. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think from a financial perspective, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too. Like one of the most important things is while you're married or while you're even talking about it, first of all, I don't think enough people have that very hard conversation soon enough. And second of all, keeping that conversation going through the marriage around like, hey, these aren't rabbit holes that we want to go down. We don't want these things to happen. But right now, while we still love each other, I want to make sure that you're good and I'm good and have those really hard conversations and involve each other.
This is where a prenup comes in a lot of ways. I'm a big proponent of it. I'm an advocate for it. And I think a lot of people that are thinking about, maybe their divorce has been finalized now, and now they're on to the next phase of their life, and they're trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces and move on. And then that involves new relationships. If you're not at least considering it, it could be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially in today's world where we see divorce rates just going outrageous, it just seems realistic to, hope for the best, but also plan to stay protected.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do on the financial side, right? So I know you have your business where you're working with law firms and you have that, but then you also have financial coaching. Yeah.
Yes. So Money Mastery is the second business that I opened, and that's where I help more so with personal finance. with a big interest in the differences between men managing finance and women managing finance. And most of it is really about the discipline, because managing money and navigating money is really, really easy. It's 10% mechanics, but that 90% perspective and mindset is what really gets us tripped up when it comes to our money. So we have a framework that we help people work through to get a grip on their finances and get some control on it and do things like invest in their future, while also kind of uncovering what I refer to as your money story, those core beliefs and values that you carry in with you into adulthood or into a relationship.
We've talked about this with some other guests that have been on the show, and I've heard that theme, the kind of the money story theme before. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think everybody, like the people that haven't heard that term before and don't really understand how it impacts some of the decisions that they make, even if they're not going through a divorce. Like, so can we talk a little bit about that?
So your money story is what is rooted in what scientists now call the imprint period. So from age 0 to about 7 to 12, you're operating mainly in your subconscious. You're still a sponge, taking in the world around you, observing, and just kind of existing. And what happens around age 7 to 12 is that you step into consciousness. And with it, you bring over 50% of your core values and beliefs, which you absorbed through your experience up until that point. So, for example, if you grew up in a household where money wasn't discussed, you're not going to feel comfortable talking about money. If you grew up in a household that associated having a lot of money with being a bad person, then you're going to feel guilty and shame around having what you would consider too much money, right? If you grow up in, like, my dad was a truck driver and he busted his butt. He was a hustler. And so I was brought up like, you have to work so hard just to live a mediocre lifestyle. And so what happens is we bring these core values and beliefs into our adulthood and we start living them out in our money story. So it's all very fascinating. And in my free time, I'm like a neurobiology nerd. Like, I love this stuff and understanding it.
This is the behavioral finance aspect of finance, effectively, right? I mean, like, this is what when you go through any kind of training in the financial world, right? Like, I worked for some big name companies and we'd always go through these, just to further develop yourself and learn, continue to educate yourself. There's a lot of this type of training going on. It's not necessarily like, we all know 2 + 2 = 4, right? But we don't really understand how some of that mapping that's happened at the age of 7 is now impacting our lives at the age of 47. Right? It's so incredibly important. It's so, like, I mean, you apparently understand it a lot more than I do, because, so, like, this is powerful, because I had that same experience. I had an experience around 7 or 8 years old that basically changed the entire trajectory of my life, which is my parents got divorced around that age. Money was tight. There was a lot of stress around it. I felt the stress. And now here I am 40 years later. I've been a financial planner for 20 years, and it's basically all I've ever thought about. So, like, that's incredible.
It really is. Like, if you sit and think for a minute, just meditate on the question, what am I scared of when it comes to my money? And almost always you can trace that fear back to an experience or a core belief. And our fears are what keep us safe, right? Because even if we don't like it, it's comfortable. We feel comfortable there, right? But, a few laws of the brain doesn't know right, wrong, real, fake, true, false. We tell it that. And whatever we tell our brain, it makes to work true, make happen in the real world. And those are all our core values and beliefs. And it's so interesting, the people that I talk to, and they tell me, this is what I'm scared of when it comes to my money. And here's where I believe I'm not capable of achieving whatever level of financial success, be it in their business or in their personal life. And the good news is science has also proven, and even has video on, we can create new neurological connections. We can change our beliefs and what we choose to make reality.
Is that the same in divorce? Because what we're kind of talking about stuff that's like, these experiences we've had at an impressionable young age, right? Like 7 or 8 years old, and then going into like the early, before basically preteen, right? So most of us that have gone through divorce are now much older at that point. We've matured and our brains have developed and so on and so forth. So is it the same with the divorce? Because that's kind of like, this is an experience you're creating for yourself in many ways, right? A lot of us have asked for the divorce. We create that experience. The experience that happened to me at 7 or 8 years old was something that happened around me. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but like, are they the same?
I think fundamentally, and let me just give it back to you to make sure I understand your question, is going through the trauma or experience of a divorce the same in terms of the imprint that it leaves on you?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that to be true. And these imprint scenarios can happen even into adulthood. But I think that's absolutely true. And when that happens, like when I meet with women who are coming out of a divorce, statistically speaking, women suffer substantially more than men after a divorce, financially, mentally, main caretaker, all of these different areas. And when I meet with someone like that, I think the key to that is really reflecting. How did I get here? How did this happen? How has it left me? What do I believe? Is that actually true? Because I promise you, if you come out of a really nasty divorce, but you want to get married again, but you're terrified, there are plenty of examples in the world that you can find where it is possible. Like there's proof everywhere that whatever we want to believe is possible is absolutely possible. But it's a process, right? And it's a very emotional process because it's grieving. You're going through the process of grieving what you thought you had, what you thought your life was going to be like.
Yeah. And I guess, and once you've wrapped your head around that, what next? Like, what are some of the first, if I'm coming to you and I'm recently divorced and I'm, trying to pick up the pieces of my life and move on to this next phase of my life, what would you tell me? As far as like, here are the next best steps for you, or some of the first steps you should be taking.
Yeah. And this is why I love money, because I am by no means like a therapist or a counselor, but naturally, and you know this, right? When you work with people and their money, you play that role kind of sometimes.
100%.
But the reason that I love money is it's an incredibly non-biased, black and white framework that we can start from. And money weaves into every facet of your life, all of it. And so if we can get the framework in place and get things started, what naturally happens is that those mental pieces, those glass ceilings, if you will, that we create ourselves start to show up, right? So if we put the framework in place, then we're like, well, I'm not living the life that I want to live. I need to make more money. All right, well, what's stopping you? Let's explore that, right? Or I put this framework into place and I spent way more money than I should have. Okay, well, let's go look at why. Like if we understand the why, and because from your beliefs comes your habits, right? Mm-hmm. That's where those habits stem from. And a lot of finance has to do with your habits and how you're managing those. So those things naturally come up within the process, but money is the perfect place to start because it's very simple, straightforward.
So it's all about getting back to the root cause, right? Like when I used to coach and train financial advisors at one of the big name firms that's out there, that's what we always went back to is the why. Like, what is the root cause?
Yep. And money gives us like this finite place to start. It's like our compass, right? And naturally, because whenever we deviate from a financial plan, there's always a feeling or emotion about it. One of the most profound things I ever heard was we are always ever only purchasing a feeling. Even if it's paying your mortgage, that is a feeling of security, right? Therapy shopping is called therapy shopping for a reason. So like one of the exercises I'll go through is we'll look at your last year's spending using like a Rocket Money or something, and we assign a feeling and we look at our money and we say, what are we trying to purchase here? What are we trying to find?
That dopamine is what everybody's looking for.
Yes. And usually we're running towards something or from something. And so coping mechanisms is a good example of running from something. Like how do we face that? How do we work through it? What do we need to do to achieve that?
It's pretty incredible. So let's say, the people that you're working with that have engaged you, like how are you coaching them towards financial independence post-divorce? Like, I know you're not a therapist, right? But you're definitely coaching these people just like we do in the financial planning world, which is, we're doing this together effectively, you and I. Like I know kind of my series of things that I take people through and some of the support that we provide them. What does that look like on your end?
Well, I'm in the process of writing a book so that I can help more people, and working to create an online course version of how I work with people one-on-one. But I'm essentially a resource hub. That's what I am. So once we get the framework set up, we get the money controlled and every dollar planned for, and set up automations, because that's an important piece. Nobody wants to sit and deal with all of that every single month. So we automate a lot of it. Now it's just about regular check-ins. So monthly, quarterly, until you essentially graduate from the program, because it's almost like you're self-coaching, self-therapy, because now you know if this happens, this is what we make of it and how we correct it.
Amazing. You and I were talking on the lead-in up to this call here about so many of podcasts like ours and so many resources and social media and all this other stuff out there is so focused on the support that women need to get through a divorce, right? Well, and I'm here to tell you that dudes need the help too. So can we talk a little bit about that for a few minutes? Because when you look at the downloads of our podcast, it's, 90% female, 10% male. And I have my own thoughts on that. And I think a lot of this is, men don't reach out for the help because they feel like they've got it handled, right? A lot of us dudes are out there like your dad. Like they're just like going to just muddle through it and just keep working, put their head down and work. And they're going to get to where they need to be someday. And instead of just reaching out for the help. So I loved your thoughts on that, because I know you have some.
Yeah, I have a lot of compassion for men in this time. I'm absolutely an advocate of women, and it's very justified that we're empowering women. Mm-hmm. But I think equally important is that we don't forget about the men and the huge transformation that has taken place is the shift of money and finance and wealth. And when women only 50 years ago could even begin to establish financial independence, what we don't think about is how that affected men. Men's role was the provider, the leader, the doer, right? And now we're living in this world where a lot of women are the breadwinners. Mm-hmm. And for some men, that leaves them feeling like, well, what is my role? Because all we've ever known, at least in this country, is that men were the financial providers. And so it leaves a lot of men feeling like, where is my value now? Mm-hmm. Right? How do I show up as a masculine support for my wife or, my whoever? And so my heart really goes out to them because it's completely overlooked. It's actually the second book that I'm going to write is acknowledging, that men are left in this place. And I feel like nobody's talking about it. And this is not a matter of women can do everything that men can do. We don't need men. Absolutely not. Yes, we do, but it is difficult. And we need to start talking about how, with all of these changes, do we maintain that value in that role for men? How is it evolving?
And I would venture to guess it's pretty scary for somebody out there, just thinking through what you're saying here, where maybe the wife has been the breadwinner in this, because I have a lot of financial planning clients that have that situation where, either the man stays home to take care of the kids and it's a role reversal of traditional roles, right? Which is totally cool. But them being out of the workforce for so long is going to have a dramatic impact on their ability to get back into it if they need to later. So that's a conundrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is very important. And that's like going back to what we said, in a marriage, don't wait till you go through a divorce, hopefully not, but till you go through a divorce to make sure that each of you is taken care of. Talk about it now. Yeah. How can we support each other now? What needs to happen? Should we go down this rabbit hole because I love you right now, to make sure that both of us are taken care of? And that's a very real struggle and a very real situation.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad people like you are out there educating the masses. I mean, education is incredibly important. And that's a lot of the reason why I do the work that I do, not only trying to like shepherd people through the divorce process and make sure that their finances are intact on the tail end of it. But that's why we do the podcast. That's why we put out as much as we do on social media. What I just try to do my best to educate as many people as we possibly can, because 50% of the people that we know that are married are probably going to have this experience one time in their life, unfortunately. And if you get married a second time, unfortunately, the news is even worse, because if it's like 60 to 70%, depending on whether it's a same sex spouse or not, you're almost doomed the second time around. So I'm glad you're doing all the work you're doing on the education part. It's incredible.
Yeah, we're at a very fascinating point in history, and I think that it's important that we do right by it. In the end.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. There should be a commercial with that quote, because the work you're doing is incredibly important. So keep it up. This is what I would call the carte blanche segment of our conversation. So I always ask, like, is there anything any questions I should have asked of you that I didn't, or anything you want to share with the audience that is important for them to know that we didn't cover today?
I will just say that I'm really excited about my new book and the follow-up. So go to our website. I'm sure you'll have it in the podcast notes.
100%.
It's moneymastery.work. Subscribe to our email list. The first one should drop fourth quarter of 2025. And that's really my life's work. And everything that we talked about today was really important. And I appreciate people like you who are making sure that, not only stay-at-home moms, but stay-at-home dads are being an active participant in the planning and in the awareness of finances.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is being an active participant. So, and I'm sure you see this too. I've seen it in 20 years of my career. Unfortunately, this happens all the time. And I talk about it on the show all the time too. So if you're listening and this is you, what are you waiting for? But there's always tends to be one person, one decision maker, one financial CFO of the family that makes all the financial decisions and is in the loop about everything. And then something like divorce or even death that happens to people, that one of these two things happens, and the next thing you know, you're left to pick up the pieces. And it's very, very challenging, because if you're just left in the lurch and you're clueless as to what you own, what you owe, how much money your spouse is making, or what the bonuses look like, and how things are invested, it can be a disaster later. Any thoughts on that?
As you said that, my podcast name, which is why I named it this, Always and Never About the Money, came up because I work with married couples as well. And counseling statistics sometimes will tell you that money is the main cause of divorce. But what is true underneath that statement is that there are no money problems, only money problems showing up in your money. And 9 times out of 10, when there is financial blindness, or plan blindness, or divorce happens and people are left in different financial positions, again, it goes back to a root issue, which is usually communication and willingness to have the hard conversations, right? That were really the issue. It just showed up in the outcome of your money.
And probably ultimately showed up in the outcome of your marriage.
Yeah.
So many marriages are all about the money.
Yeah. So
many divorces are about the money. I should say divorces. So many marriages are about the money, yes, but most divorces are about the money as well.
Yeah. So like for your listeners, if you're married now or you want to get married again, like money is a fantastic conversation to have, to see if the person that you're with or dating is able to have those hard conversations, is considerate, is willing to come to the table and be an active participant. Like, again, it's such a great place to start because it stems everywhere.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. Yes, we will make sure you have everybody who's listening. If you're driving right now, do not pull over. We will make sure all the links and all social media and everything else links to the book and everything are in the show notes for today. So Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us and sharing such valuable financial wisdom. For our listeners interested in enhancing their financial strategies, both personally and professionally, I encourage you to follow Chelsea on social media, visit her website, and tune into her podcast for more expert advice. Remember, if you're looking for support with your financial planning or need guidance through the complexities of divorce, Allegiant Divorce Solutions is here to assist. Visit allegiantds.com for more resources and expert guidance. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more discussions just like this that empower and inform. Until next time.